Thank you, Rachel. And you know the old saying, folks, they save the best for last, and somehow I'm starting today. So in any event, first and foremost, I want to thank the Des Moines Register, Rachel and her staff for their efforts to put this together. And I also want to reassure each and every one of you that I share the Register's objective when they talk about civil discourse. We've lost it, we need to regain it, and I intend to lead the way on making sure that people can disagree without being disagreeable. Welcome to Iowa. So as Rachel said, my name is Chris McGowan. I am the Republican nominee for the 4th Congressional District of Iowa. I'm delighted to be with you today. I presently serve as the president of the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce. I've been with that organization for 23 years this week, believe it or not. And where I come from, we call a beautiful day like today Chamber of Commerce weather. Again, welcome to Iowa. I'm going to take just a minute to talk about some of the issues that are most important to Iowans in this particular cycle. And if we have some time at the end of the 20 minutes, I will be happy to take some questions, and then I know there's a press gaggle that follows. If I'm looking at my watch, it's not because I want to be somewhere else. It's because I want to respect Rachel and the Register and the time they've allocated for me to have the opportunity to visit with you today. But I want to begin here. Today is a very special day at the Iowa State Fair, and it's one that requires us to take a moment to say thank you. Today is Veterans Day at the Iowa State Fair, and if you're a veteran, would you please, if you are able, would you please stand, or if you're standing, would you raise your hand with me? All our veterans, those who are serving today, let's give them a round of applause and thank them for what they do to defend freedom around the globe. So a little bit about my background. I grew up in Sioux City. I graduated from Bishop Heelan in 1985. For those of you who are doing the math quickly, that makes me old. I'm 59 years old. I am a first-time candidate for public office. My beautiful wife, Kathleen, of 27 years, is with me here today. Say hi, Kathleen. There she is. Kathleen and I have raised 6 children, and we're very proud of our 6 children. I will tell you that we are a military family. We are a family that understands the commitment required to serve in the armed forces. I am blessed to be the son of a mother who's in the Iowa 4-H Hall of Fame. I grew up on these fairgrounds, spending lots of time in the 4-H building. I'm also blessed to be the son of a Vietnam veteran who taught me the importance of service to our country. Folks, there's a very important quote that I think is particularly appropriate on Veterans Day at the Iowa State Fair. The quote comes from Thomas Paine, and for those of you who are students of history, Thomas Paine was a Revolutionary War-era patriot. And in 1777, in a pamphlet entitled The Crisis, Paine was trying to drum up support to take up arms against the British, against the Loyalists in America's Revolution. At that time, Thomas Paine wrote, and I quote, "Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigue of supporting it," unquote. Now, that's 250 years ago, and notwithstanding the gender-specific language, the quote is spot on. And that service can be in the military. My father served, I served. Today, 5 of our 6 children are serving in the armed forces. I did a radio interview a while back, and the interviewer said, "Chris, we've done our homework on you, and we know that 5 of your 6 children are serving in the armed forces." My question for you is, what's the matter with that 6th kid? And I said, now hold on, give her a chance. She's only in junior high school. And so our youngest has some big shoes to fill, some big decisions to make. She'll be a freshman at my alma mater, Sioux City Heelan, beginning next week. And she has 4 years to make a decision about whether she wants to follow her older siblings. That said, service extends beyond our armed forces. With total and complete respect to Rachel and her team at the Des Moines Register, that service can also be fighting for our First Amendment and making sure that we have a free press. And let's hear it for the press that sponsors this for Iowans. That service might also be a school teacher, a pastor, a firefighter, a police officer, a first responder. There are many people that contribute to the unique fabric that makes this country the exceptional place that it is today. It is my hope that at 59, I can continue my family's legacy of service, but now in a different capacity. As I said, I served in uniform when I was much younger and quite a bit thinner and didn't have any gray hair. But today, with a career in the rearview mirror, some gray hair, and hopefully some wisdom gained over the decades, it is my hope to reflect the values and to be the voice of Iowa's 4th Congressional District. Now people ask, Chris, what are the priorities? You've been on the campaign trail for over a year now. What do you hear most frequently from Iowa's voters in the 4th Congressional District? What's most important to them? Certainly the economy, folks. We recognize that economic security and economic success are critically important to each of our families and to us individually. It was with this in mind that 23 years ago, I took a job working in economic development. So for the last 20 plus years, my job has been to help facilitate job creation and to bring good paying jobs to the state of Iowa and my community in the western part of our state. It's also my responsibility to recruit capital, to bring dollars, to invest in our communities. And I'm very proud of our track record. In fact, in the last 17 years, the Siouxland Metropolitan Statistical Area has led the nation in economic development within our population category, which is metros 200,000 people and below. In the last 17 years, we've led the nation a remarkable 12 times. And yes, I'm very proud of that record. What I share with you is that I have the foundation to make sure that when we're working on legislation in our nation's capital that directly affects the economy, that does affect job creation, that affects capital investment, I've been in the trenches working on those deals for over 2 decades. Now, in addition to economic security and the importance of job creation and capital investment in Iowa, another issue that I hear a great deal about is eminent domain. Now, eminent domain was not a subject that was on a lot of people's radar screen a few short years ago, but it has jumped to the top of the list for many of our farmers, and particularly in IA-04. And the reason for that is because people want to be assured and reassured that their property, their investment in property is sacred, and that they can dictate and they can have input on how their property is used. Now, if you will indulge me for just a moment, a quick lesson about how eminent domain works. So one of my dirty little secrets, and I tell people you can't hold it against me because I've never practiced law, but I earned a law degree, I sat for and passed the bar exam, and I've been licensed to practice law in the state of Iowa for 23 years. I don't practice, I haven't practiced, I have no intention of practicing, but I wanted the education. I wanted to firmly understand what the Constitution said and what case law meant and what legislation meant and how the executive branch and the executive agencies were sometimes dictating terms to the legislative branch on laws that they had written. With those considerations in mind, in 2005, the United States Supreme Court in Kelo versus New London, Connecticut, flipped eminent domain on its head. Now, what had historically been the case is eminent domain, which is provided for in the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment in our Constitution, talked about the government's power to seize land for a public use, okay? I want to focus on the word use because historically a use was a park, a school, a road, a military installation, a courthouse, or something along those lines. But in 2005, with a slight majority, the U.S. Supreme Court extended public use to more a definition that reflected a public purpose. And in that case, the Kelo family property, which I believe was a family farm, was seized because the government felt they would generate more tax revenue with a strip mall rather than a farm. And that may have been correct, but is that reason enough for someone to seize your private property? No, the answer isn't just no, it's of course not. That is not sufficient in my mind, and I have every confidence that when given the opportunity to readdress this holding, the Supreme Court will reconsider. Now, let's think about this for just a minute. I understand the importance of increasing markets for farmers, to have more places to sell corn, to make sure that we can increase the price on a bushel of corn. But I can't allow the seizure of the same farmer's property for a project that they don't support or never intended for their land to be used for. I'm going to take this a little bit further. In the Kelo case, they used it for a strip mall. What if in another case they decided, I'm going to seize your farmland for a strip club? How are you going to feel about that? The vast majority of us are going to say, no, absolutely not. My farm, my property, I raised my family here. My spouse and I raised our children here, and we're not going to let the government seize land for something, regardless of what the purpose is, that we may not agree with. So for this reason, I must say no. I must say no, and I must stand firm with property owners in defending personal property rights. Other issues that we're hearing a great deal about right now, and I want to be very specific. We're asking the men and women in uniform to take on an increased role and an increased sacrifice. After the November 3rd election, Republicans and Democrats will go to our nation's capital, and in their respective caucuses, the men and women who are elected to serve will make decisions about who serves on which committees. I don't know what committees I'll be assigned if I'm successful on November 3rd, but I hope to have an outspoken and an outside voice supporting veterans and the men and women who serve in our armed forces today. To me, when a young man or a young woman raises their right hand and accepts an oath to support and defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and the contract that they make with our government is up to and including their very lives, do they not deserve everything that we can provide them in terms of resources, training, and equipment? And the answer is a resounding yes. I have had the opportunity to meet with the leadership of the House Armed Services Committee. If I am successful on November 3rd, and I certainly will do everything in my power to ensure that we're successful on November 3rd in IA-04, if invited to serve on that committee, it would be a tremendous honor. Because as I said, as the son of a Vietnam veteran, as a veteran myself, as the father of 5 who are serving in uniform today, I want to make sure that our country is doing everything in our power to make sure that those young men and women have access to everything they need to be safe and to be effective. Now, I also think that that means that the federal government has a responsibility to be extremely prudent in the use of arms and using these young men and women. And that will be paramount, top of mind, critically important concern for me as we look going forward to how we utilize what President Trump in his inaugural address in 2024 said will be the most powerful military the world has ever seen. I want to be specific about the conversation that I had with the President of the United States earlier this year. When he called and indicated that he would be endorsing our campaign for Congress, at the conclusion of that conversation, I said, "Mr. President, may I please add one thing?" And he said, "Yes, Chris, what is it?" And I said, "Sir, I believe the most seminal statement that you made in your 2024 inaugural address was the following: we're going to build the most powerful military the world has ever seen, and we're going to judge our success not only by the wars we win, but perhaps more importantly, by the wars we never get into." I grew up in the Reagan era. I was blessed as a member of Iowa's delegation to American Legion Boys Nation to meet President Reagan in the Rose Garden at just 17 years old. President Reagan had a mantra. That mantra was peace through strength. I have every intention of following President Reagan's mantra as it relates to the very conservative use of military force, and only when diplomacy and all other avenues have failed. With that in mind, they're telling me that I'm getting very, very close to my 20-minute limit, so I'd be happy to take a question or two before we wrap up at exactly 10 to 2. Are there any? Yes, sir. So the question is, what will the federal government do to close loopholes, if I understand the question correctly, related to false accusations of sexual harassment? Do I understand your question? Okay. There's a little bit of background noise, but I want to do right by you, sir, and make sure that I summarize your question correctly. And I believe that it's, what will you do to make sure that unsubstantiated allegations in the workplace related to sexual harassment don't destroy the careers of those falsely accused? Is that fair? So he wants to make sure that those that make false accusations are also punished. And I'm going to guess that stems from a personal experience. Okay, so I will say this. As an attorney, I will tell you that there are mechanisms in place. You're clearly not satisfied with them because it's something that you've seen on multiple occasions. But let's do this. When I wrap up, we'll have a sidebar, and I'd like to learn more about your experience and what you're looking for. We have time for probably one more question. Yes, ma'am. So the question is, what are my thoughts on the water cancer connection in our state? Folks, one of the biggest issues that we're hearing today is about Iowa's rising incidence of cancer on a per capita basis relative to the rest of the country. We have to fix this. We have to correct this. As I recruit people to this state, as I recruit business executives to this state, as I recruit employers to this state, I have to be in a position to sell what makes this truly unique and magnificent. We talk about quality of life when we do that, and quality of life extends to strong education, strong recreation, strong health care. And what Kelly's question is clearly focused on is making sure that health care remains paramount. And Kelly, we can visit about this after, but I've been flashed a card that says my time is up. I want to respect and thank Rachel's time limit. Thank you all very much, and I hope you'll vote Chris McGowan in Iowa 4. Thank you.